Hi there. In this lecture, let's have a look at Emanuel Lasker against Wilhelm Steinitz, 1894 World Championship match, round 7. So e4 from Lasker, we have e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, d6, the old Steinitz defense, d4, bishop d7, we have knight c3, knight ge7, bishop e3, knight g6, queen d2, so white has an intention potentially of castling queenside. Bishop e7, and white does castle queenside. a6, bishop e2, e takes d4, knight takes d4. So this opposite side castling scenario is actually rather interesting. One of the more subtle benefits of opposite side castling, let's imagine the king is going to go to g8, is that these pawns are actually more dangerous than usual because there's no king behind them. And so there's a level of complexity afforded in opposite side castling, and that complexity is like literally, you might have heard the expression, the moving parts. There are literally moving parts here which can be dangerous for creating a lot of problems to solve. So even in that respect, opposite side castling, it isn't just the idea that it's a race on both sides to get to each other's kings quite often. It's the fact that these are more dangerous weapons by the fact that the king is not behind them. So that's a subtle point to bear in mind here. Even if something goes wrong along the way, there's a level of complexity which creates opportunity to set the opponent's problems. So this is a very, very interesting situation. We have knight takes d4, queen takes d4, bishop f6, queen d2, bishop c6, and here knight d5, black castles. And now perhaps a slightly committal move, g4. I know these pawns can be pushed generally, but it seems this might be a little bit too far. A very interesting choice is h4 here. For example, bishop takes h4, g3. This situation is very, very interesting. For example, like this with f5. And it turns out this structure, which is iconic for Lasker, in this particular position does well. If knight e5, in fact, the immediate bishop g5 is rather awkward, winning the queen. And if knight f8, bishop d4, this situation, black would have to give up. It seems very dangerous. Black's best might be to give up the exchange, but it leads to a dangerous situation where white does have the advantage. So h4 might actually be better than g4, it seems. So with g4, rook e8 was played, and now g5, and here there's a remarkable forcing sequence to Steinitz's credit that he played. He first plays bishop takes d5, so that gets rid of one of white's most important pieces. We see queen takes d5. The options here, if g takes f6, bishop takes e4, and that hits the rook, that's a very, very good option for black. Black's doing well there. If e takes d5, can you see what black plays here, which is very clever and logical for 100 points? Yeah, rook takes e3. This would be setting white problems. So we can rule out queen takes because a bishop takes g5, pinning the queen. And on f takes e3, you might ask, it's actually rather pleasant here. The king is quite safe. It's more pleasant for white than for black. Black's actually got a slight advantage overall. So we have queen takes d5, but this allows a forcing move, rook e5. Queen d2, and we're going into forcing move complications because now Steinitz, to his credit, he plays in a really resourceful and tactically deep manner, it seems, at least from one perspective. He actually plays bishop takes g5. Yeah, bishop takes g5. He's exploiting the diagonal of death, but it's leading to another more subtle tactic here. After f4, if king b1, bishop takes, this situation is not very palatable for white. Black's got a really comfortable position with advantage. So f4 is played, but you'll note that these bishops, they're only protected by the queen. So just make a note of that. We have rook takes e4, and you might think, wow, what is going on here? So the thing is, if this isn't, this is quite dangerous. So it's taken. I mean, black is threatening rook takes and bishop takes f4. So that's taken, but it's like the sting at the end of the tail to win at least the battle, if not the war, is Queen e7. It's skewering the rooks. It's actually leaving Wilhelm Steinitz, pawns up here. So rook f1 is played, and we can see that, okay, there's a priority of using the light square bishop without a counterpart to try and focus heavily on the soft spot in the possession. But yeah, technically, if we look at this looks unsound the way it's been played. But this goes back to my earlier point that even if some horrible stuff happens, maybe, one of the lessons here is to play on, because these pawns are, they're more dangerous than usual. The king's locked behind them, so they can use to kind of create trouble for the king. We see bishop c4 trying to create trouble for the king, though, trying to set problems. And the knight goes back. This seems rather awkward. Rook f8 here might be the better bet. Yeah, it does seem rather awkward. We have knight h8, h4, c6. So the bishop is trying to be shut down, but g6 now. d5 is actually a mistake. It seems here, critical defense is needed. That we can rule out knight takes because a rook takes f7 crashing through. But on h takes, this is interesting for h5. Even with the knight on h8, black could take on h5, and it looks scary for sure. But with this trebling, there's an idea of rook e1. So if we have here this situation, it is a very interesting situation. But black overall is going to be better. Just knight g6 and black's better. Black, there's no problem here. The knight's coming back in the game. And now, there is a rook e1 as needed if white wants to try and get back to f7. So it seems technically black had an opportunity here to, get advantage, basically. And if we look at this again on knight takes g6, which wasn't, that's horrible, but h takes g6 rather, this situation, if rook h1, queen e5, and black does seem to be standing well. So anyway, in the event though, d5 was played, and now the king is kind of exposed a bit. It's put into an x-ray technically with this rook. Bishop d3 check, okay, the out of the x-ray, but now h5. This pawn is causing a little bit of trouble. And you might think, well, at this level, surely this is defendable. It's very difficult to defend in practice. Rook e8, h6 is causing problems. And you can see one of the major benefits of castling on the queen side here, that we can use our pawns to try and break through, because they haven't got the king living, under them. We can do this very aggressive stuff. g6, h7 check, and this vacates h6. King g7, now king b1. If queen h2, queen g5 here would defend the h6 square from queen h6, that would be, it's a mate threat. And here, black should be fine with careful play. But king b1, we have queen e5 though. It seems here f6 was a plan. A, to try and re-centralize the knight, and B, to shut down this diagonal. So for example, a3, g5, this situation seems stable enough for black. So careful defense. And it seems, black shouldn't have too much to worry about here. But we have queen e5, a3, c5, and now queen f2, trying to get the bouncy roads of attack going. Queen here, checkmate threat. We have c4. g5 should have been played to stop this bouncy roads of attack, it seems. And this position, although it's going to be equal after rook f5 because d5 has been loosened. Yes, black hasn't been playing too accurately here, it seems. White's actually clawing back into the game in this variation. So interesting, d5 being weak there. Potentially because of, the common square f5, latent common square f5, and other stuff. Who would have thought? So c4 though is played, but worse is to come now. Queen h4, threatening checkmate. We have f6. So if c takes, just to put this on the board, queen h6 is checkmate. So f6. And now that common square, that killer common square, is actually interesting. Guess what white plays here for 200 points? Yeah, the killer common square gives us some hope, it seems, even if it looks absolutely ridiculous, because bishop f5 was played. We have king f7. If g takes, what is going on here? Well, the pawns have done their job, kind of. We can use the g file. And here, queen h5 check. And here, rook takes f5 is a funny one, because we've broken the treble battery, so there's no rook e1. And we're looking at d5 here. Well, there is a rook e1, but it doesn't do much. You know, we're going to win the queen here. So otherwise, what is going on here? If queen d6, the problem is rook g7 check. And rook takes d5 is the punchline here. Yeah, the king's been chased into, and the queen's got in trouble as a result. So it's very, very interesting that, you know, this situation, check, we're winning the rook, if nothing else. We can just take the rook if we want. Or there's even better trying to mate, but this is winning enough on this occasion. Okay, so you know this is really interesting how a common square here on f5 in the opposite side castling scenario is potentially dangerous. You know, this is a world championship match, and this stuff is dangerous against Steinitz. It is. We have king f7, rook hg1, g takes, queen h5 check, king e7, and now rook g8 using that peg, that common square, the g8 common square between the pawn. And we've got a concrete threat here. We've also got that common squares, two common squares working together, in fact. If we outline commonality squares, yeah, both of them are being leveraged. It's a real fight back. Rook takes f5, setting black problems. Queen e6. Rook takes e8. Queen takes e8. And now rook takes f6 check. Yeah, there's problems here. King c5 is played, but now queen h6. So this actually threatens rook f8, and it also means, you know, there's dark square possibilities as well emerging. We have rook e7, and now queen h2, and look, there's a common square here. It's like every common square in sight has been leveraged by Lasker's play. It's remarkable. Queen g1 check, and this is very dangerous. It drags the pawn forward. So black's king safety has been reduced. If king b5, queen b6 check, queen b4 is checkmate. So king safety is being reduced here. And we have queen g5 check, and there's not too many options now. The queen has to go in front, losing the queen to rook f5. So was this a swindle or something, this game? It's interesting, you know, here, so white's won the queen, and now he's going to win the knight. End of game. But, you know, when you see a strong move, look for an even stronger one, as Lasker says. So we can actually take on d4 first, check, check, and then take the knight. That's even stronger. So, yes, a very funny game. There's a few notions here creeping in, which you need to, like, check this game and play for it a few times. So you get the idea that, you know, this whole problem-solving thing is quite a big thing, and complexity as a weapon was used by Mikhail Tal. It was one of Mikhail Tal's favourites to set problems at the board, and that is actually worth something. Now, we're being a bit more specific here in this opposite side castling scenario. We're saying if the king's not behind the pawns, there are moving parts which literally head towards the opponent's king, try and open up lines, rip open lines, and create killer common squares, or even subtle common squares which can be leveraged, those pegs that we can leverage to set the opponent even more problems. So a remarkable use of opposite side castling, of pawns being used as battering rams, of those common squares, subtle ones like f5 and g8, who would have thought? And the end result is king exposure and getting back the material with interest. So a really interesting game in the style, you know, you could perhaps say of Mikhail Tal. Mikhail Tal was to win World Championship games in 1960, setting huge problems at the board. So even though in a theoretical sense you could say, oh, wow, really, 2 pawns down, there's more going on here. The whole notion of setting the opponent practical problems is true because, you know, there are time limits. And people are human. So a very, very interesting game for how to set problems, what to look out for when you've castled on the queen side, what you can actually do with that as a benefit if your king's kind of safe. And it was kind of safe, and some air was made for it at some point with a3, of course, here as well. Okay, very interesting stuff. Hope you enjoyed this one. so much.